So I'm gonna record. I'm gonna screen share, go to our PowerPoint and minimize. Well, first get our PowerPoint larger and here we go. So this is slide 48. We left off right here in when we started talking about the function of semilunar valves. Now, for this particular group watching this, this is part two. This is part two, starting here in the clinical. Part one, I'll upload hopefully sometime tonight, as well as part two. So it's going to go in the flow. So again, I hope that some of you are doing your Pearson assignments, Pearson modules, because it just makes this a much better experience if you are doing that. But we end it here on this is the end of part one, and this is the beginning of part two, the clinical slide 48, for those who wish to follow along with their own PowerPoints in their own personal study time as well. So we have two situations or conditions that can severely weaken a heart. And what is the overall goal of the heart, right? That is to pump, but not only to pump out, but in as well, right? We have to get oxygenated blood from the lungs, pulmonary, has to come in oxygenated, and then that oxygen in red blood cells, that's why chapter 17 was really important. We talked about hemoglobin and carrying oxygen. Then that oxygen goes through all parts of the body and is used as the final electron acceptor in the electron transport chain through the process of cellular respiration, i.e., in other words, creating adenosine triphosphate, ATP. That is the main reason why we need oxygen. The brain uses so much oxygen that when it stops itself from getting oxygen, it blacks out because it doesn't have enough energy, because the brain is constantly using lots of ATP. So we're going to have the pumping from lung to heart, oxygenated, going to the rest of the body. And then we're going to have parts of red blood cells coming back, but they're going to be poorly oxygenated because the oxygen was used. And as a result, now it's going to have CO2, which is a byproduct of cellular respiration. And we need to get that out of our bodies. We need to get it out. So here are the two conditions: the incomplete or incompetent valve. And we just talked about valves over here. So we go into the atrioventricular valve, we go into semilunar valves, and then we have, I call this usually the IV valve, and we have a situation where blood backflows, and that's not something we really want. So the heart repumps same blood over and over. It's kind of like a situation of a hepatic recirculation. In this case, we have this loop going back and forth. It's the same blood. Not good, because we want new blood. We want blood that's oxygenated, or blood that's coming in that's poorly oxygenated to get out. But when we have this situation occur, we have backflow. That is not cool at all. The valvular stenosis, it says these stiff flaps that constrict the opening. So when we go back and we talk about valves, we looked at the little flaps, right? And the stiffening. As a result, the heart needs to exert more force to then pump blood, causing stress, increasing cardiac muscle activity, and causing the heart to become fatigued, also known as weakened. So a defective valve can be replaced with a mechanical, animal, and cadaver valve. We can do that. That is possible. Now, here are some things that when we go back and try to remember left side, right side, we're going to, in terms of the heart, and I say this in part one, I'm going to say it again. You have to keep your lefts and rights in check. I always say this thing, and I didn't read it for anyone, it's just my own. When it comes to anatomy and it comes to human health, I have a little saying that goes, it's not about me, it's about you. And if you think of if you think of that, it's not about me, it's about you. You never think me, like I don't want to think of myself, my left, my right. We always think in terms of the anatomical position of the human body, which is like, you know, Eric facing me. He's an anatomical position. I'm an anatomical position to him, right? But he should never think about himself. Never, ever, 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 ever. Because you don't want to write that down in your notes and get it wrong. Left. It's not your left, it's their left, right? That's how come you usually have 3 signatures for the knee replacement. The anesthesiologist signs off on the leg, then the head chief or head RN, she signs it, he signs it, then the surgeon comes in, signs it. And once that person, that's that, they're not even yet, they're not even prepped yet. Then they get prepped, then they go into the surgery room, then they all 3 of them have to concur. And anesthesiologist looks at it, you concur signature, I concur signature. RN, you concur signature, I concur signature. Surgeon concur signature, I concur signature. 3 individuals concur signatures because people have cut the wrong legs because they got it wrong. That is the why they do the 3 signatures. Has anybody seen that before? Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, actually, this I think it was past December or something like that. I had gone for a checkup for my head there at the hospital, and one of the guys was talking to a nurse with like a whole broken arm and everything, and he was telling her he was like he couldn't really speak, and she was opposite to him and saying it was his right arm, right arm, right arm, when in reality it was his left. And I was like thinking like, ma'am, you got it wrong. But she wrote that down in her notes. It was, I don't know. I found it
Oh
funny, like
yeah, yeah,
you're opposite. It's the opposite way. I don't know.
yeah. And it happens. It has actually amputations, incorrect amputations have happened. They're not common, but it has happened. And people then they come in for a knee replacement. The knee gets then open. They look at the knee, and the surgeon's like, "Wait a minute, this one looks okay. What the hell?" And then we're gonna sew this guy back up. Oopsie, you know. Then they wake up and like they have to cancel. You got to cancel that again. They have to heal now. You cut the knee. They're gonna it's not a good situation. So keep it together. Keep it together, because when we talk about the heart, we're gonna go into this whole left, right, left, right, left, right. So when we look at pathways and flows of blood through heart, let's take a look at right side of heart. In terms of right side, superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, and coronary sinus. Here are all the other things that we have going in terms of right side of heart. Left side heart. 4 pulmonary veins. Pulmonary, right? That's very important. Now you're talking lung. Left atrium, mitral valve, left ventricle, aortic semilinear valve. That's the one we covered in part 1. Aorta, largest artery, systemic circulation begins. Now, you have to have right side and left side in order to have full systemic circulation. Very important to have that. So keep in mind on terms of left side, right side. Now, here's one way of taking a look at it in terms of flow. Let me stop real quick. Go ahead, Eric.
Sir, it's actually funny you say that about the right and left side on how you need both, because I personally have something called hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and that's, well, for short, HLHS. And what that is when I was born, I didn't have a left ventricle. It was too small. It didn't function. So I underwent 3 different surgeries, and I only have the right side of the heart.
Now, wow. Well, because of that situation, because of that, when you start thinking about this circulation process, so do you experience any difficulties in terms of oxygen or CO2 like release?
So naturally, my heart rate is faster since it's working twice as much. And when I go for appointments, it's usually on the lower 90s, high 80s. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I've been good for almost 21 years this Sunday. So,
Wow. Yeah,
and
that's
it's crazy because you were about to talk about the blood flow, and I completely bypassed the left side of the heart, and it drops like through gravity straight into the lungs and then back up
yes.
to the right atrium.
Yep.
And
Yeah. Wow.
that's how mine works.
Yep. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Eric, for sharing that. I think that that's probably a better clinical than anything we have in our presentation. I can promise you that, buddy. I promise you. There's nothing in here that's is that educational. For when you hear it from a person and explaining it in that manner, yeah, I think we're gonna get it. So appreciate that so much. Really do. And you're doing really well. So you're doing a lot of good things, right, Eric? And I know that that's not easy. You have to monitor a lot of things, a lot of things. So keep up the good work. Now, one thing I wanted to say, and I said it on the, I didn't record this. I didn't record this, but it was a little leading conversation, and I'll say it here is that the heart historically has been painted upon in shields of soldiers for battle and things back in the ancient times. And I don't mean the little Valentine hearts. It wasn't really painted like that. It was more like fist like, and it kind of, now remember, the heart kind of comes like that, right? So they drew it like this, and then later did the curvature on the top, which that's how you have the image like that. But the heart goes like, looks like this at an angle. So then they kind of drew it like that. And they eventually it evolved symmetry. The heart is not symmetrical. The heart is kind of like this. But then we drew the little hearts that we have in Valentine's. But since ancient times, humans have appreciated all the way from the Incas and the Mayas, early European or early European dark times. They understood that there was something very symbolic about this, that there was human emotion. You can feel sad. It hurts here. Why does it, if my dog dies, why doesn't my right buttock hurt? You know, why doesn't my left buttocks hurt, or my nose? Yes, it hurts. Or you get happy and you feel it in your chest, right? And what is very special about the heart is that before the, I think the one thing that has not given up on us throughout our entire lives. We all make mistakes. We all fail in every relationship, brothers, sisters, whatever, mothers, fathers, nephews, nieces, whatever. But the heart is the champion of all champions. It keeps on pumping for us. And a lot of us take it for granted. And the only time it stops is during a time of a heart attack, some sort of cardiac arrhythmia situation, or our last breath. And it's with us since before we are born. It's also one of the first organs that's beginning to develop besides the neural tube in the fetus is the heart. That's one of the first things you kind of hear. They a young lady or a lady goes in and they put sonogram. She's expecting a little one, and then what you don't even quite see it, but you hear it. It's like life, and it doesn't stop. It's such an amazing thing to take a step back and look at this beautiful, well-designed, amazing heart. And even in Eric's situation, how it's managing to continue on its mission, even though it didn't have everything it needed. It's just amazing. Teresa, go ahead.
Sure. Now that we're talking about the heart, I've seen I used to work in human resources for many years. And I saw two medical excuses that said that people were diagnosed with broken heart syndrome. Is that a thing? And actually what happened was the lady's husband passed away, and the other one, her son, passed away. And the doctor said broken heart syndrome. And I had never heard of that before. And I saw it on two medical excuses.
I have never heard it, but I'm not shocked to hear of that. It's like sometimes someone's in a hospital and so a situation like that, a husband or wife passes, and then in a few days, the other one goes, you know, when they were doing okay. Like literally they were like so broken and they end. It's I mean, wow, that's interesting. Alexis, go ahead.
I had a heart murmur when I was little.
So what happened about that, or did you kind of like overcome that naturally?
I had to get a coil in my heart.
Because in some situations the murmur, like it's depending on your age, and then some children like kind of like outgrow it. That does happen sometimes.
Yeah, they had like I had to wait till like it closes.
Yeah,
so-
okay.
The whole closed. Yeah.
Wow. Good. And you can hear that too. You can hear a difference in murmurs as well if you're
Yeah, I had
good
to
at
get
it.
bombs all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, since we're talking about the topic of hearts, okay, I have to say something because some of you are going to be listening to a lot of hearts. I have a friend who went to a doctor because his wife was pregnant. Went to this doctor, and then this doctor says that he cannot hear the heart of the baby. This is a true story. So they get scared and they immediately go to the capital of this particular state that they're in. And as soon as they walk in there, like go to the emergency room, they say they bring her in real quick. And like the nurse there's like, I hear it. So then a PA comes, I hear it. And then the emergency room doctor comes like, yeah, I hear it. Like, who said that? So be careful with your stethoscopes. Okay. You might want to go get another one before you tell two parents that their baby might be dead. You might want to go get another set and put it on. That's just like, oh, it's messed up. I know. So yeah, just keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. Ashley, go ahead.
That actually happened to my sister, and she's pregnant right now. I don't know the whole story, but she found out she was pregnant. They heard the baby's heartbeat, and then I don't know how frequently she would go to the doctor. She went again, and they ended up telling her like that they couldn't hear the baby's heartbeat, and for her to like go home and kind of just be expecting to have a miscarriage. Oh man, it sucked. She went back again for like a vaginal ultrasound, and oh my god, her emotions were all over the place. All over the place. She didn't even know, she couldn't even go into work because she works in a hospital. So she knew all her employees that were there, and everybody was just, they felt like shit because everybody knows each other. It was crazy.
That's not good. So thanks for sharing. And I'm unfortunately I did not want to hear another of those. I thought it was going to be more of an isolated situation, but that something similar happened. Not good. So not sure on the pronunciation. So Arely, is that how I pronounce it? Arely?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that happened to a friend of mine too, but it was like she was the one that was hearing it. And then she said something like, I guess she was learning or something. I don't know. She was trying to learn, and I think she said like, "Oh, I can't hear it," but as in like they couldn't hear it with the thing. And she was like, "What?" The mother was like, "What?" And she was like, "No, not with this one. Let me go get another one." You don't say that out loud.
Correct.
I was like, "No."
Good job.
Like,
Good.
and the doctor like got mad at her. She got so mad. She was like, "You don't say that in front of patients." Like, no sé qué. I was just like, "Yeah, you don't say that."
You're right. And that's good that we talked about this. I don't want any of you to get in trouble or get a write-up or anything like that. So we keep those things to ourselves. You say, "Oh, excuse me. Oh, wait, I forgot something. I forgot something." We exit out of the patient's room. They don't get another one. Test it on someone else. Hey, come here real quick. Come here. And you hear, okay, I got, okay. And then you go back in, test it on someone walking in, a colleague real quick, So you just don't do those things. And it could even lead to stress, the stress a mother, depending on who she is and how she handles things, could take. Who knows, she could have even like a mild heart attack. She'd go into a panic attack. She could not breathe enough. She could pass out. She can hit her head. She can hit her stomach. I mean, there's so many bad things that can happen, that you're right, Adelie, you keep that to yourself. And if you can't hear that, don't say anything. Say, hey, you know what? We have someone, I want someone to check something out really quick, and you bring someone else in. You don't say that to someone. You don't do that. Yes, Victoria, go ahead.
I had like the same experience with my second son. But this was when I was already going to give birth to him. So they like had me monitored, and then they're like, well, we can't find the heart, like we can't get the beat. And so like I'm like stressing already, because I'm like trying to have a baby, and then you're telling me you can't find the heart. And so she was like back and forth, looking and nothing. And then she goes and tells another nurse, like, can you come and help me? And they couldn't find it. So it was like stress on me. And then not only my mom was there, and my firstborn was there, like, so, and my sister also. So they're like, what's going on? And they wouldn't say anything. They just kept on like looking and looking. So they went in, and my sister told one of them, like, why don't you try like maybe another of those like pads? She's like, maybe something's wrong.
Yes.
And so that's what they did. And yeah, it turns out it was like a defect on those things.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. There are many different reasons why you may not get a sound on it. Yarnelli, go ahead.
And not exactly the same thing happened. It wasn't really so much of listening to the stethoscope with for the heartbeat, but
yeah,
when I was giving birth to my son, he's 1 now, but when I was giving birth, he actually got stuck at his shoulders on the way out, and he cold brewed, and it just goes into the whole like don't say anything until you can figure out what's going on. I actually had no idea until I already like after I gave birth. Like I had no idea that he was not breathing or that he was stuck, or like I literally like. And people, when I tell people the story, they're like, how did you not know? Like if the nurses like rushed in and they helped me, they like pushed down on my stomach to help me get him out. But he's my first child. So like I thought that was normal. Like I didn't know anything was going on.
What is normal, right? You have no reference. Not like you spend every day, looking.
Yeah. So I didn't know until like after when that he was already out, that I didn't hear him. Like I saw him, but I didn't hear him. That okay, now I know something's going on.
And you were focused. You're focused. Your whole DNA code of being a new mother is like doing that job, and you are laser focused. Nothing else matters. You need to do, and that's a good staff. That's a good staff, because they kept you focused on what you need to do, because getting you unfocused was not going to help anything. So if we learn today, unfortunately, that these events are more commonplace than I ever would have thought, but good job in the end coming in with a different story, meaning those people did the opposite of some of the other stories, and kudos to those individuals. They did it right. So congratulations on that. Eric, go ahead.
Sir, I was wondering, but can they also get in trouble for like not saying anything?
Eventually they told Yarnelli, right? They told her what happened toward the end, but once the thing happened, like once baby's out, okay, and then they're gonna check baby, okay, he started breathing, and then they say, we had a complication and he was stuck and all this, like they're not gonna just take a baby out and the baby didn't make it, never tell the mom, like that's.
It's because the reason I'm asking is because when I was born, the nurses, they took me clean whatever, right? And they didn't take me back to my mom, and they just had me there in the little nursery, but I wasn't eating. And that's when my mom's like, hey, I haven't seen my baby, where is he? And the nurses hadn't told her, oh, he's not doing too well, he's not eating. And she had to get up and go to the nursery to like, hey, where's my kid? And then from there they were able to figure out. And then, yeah.
Well, I don't know, maybe that she wasn't told, like maybe she was in a recovery state, and they wanted to get her back up on her feet. Maybe she was already good to go, and no, maybe someone was waiting to draw the short straw to go tell this lady that, hey, her son is struggling. Maybe no one wanted to, oh, who's going to go talk to her? It could have been one of those things too. Go ahead, Yaranelli.
They definitely have to tell you after, because for example, my son, after he was born, well, since he got stuck at his shoulders, he suffered nerve damage from his shoulder to his neck and needed physical therapy. When I went to physical therapy, they told me they couldn't say specifically if it was because of that, but had they not told me that, I would have just gone wondering why my son's head was basically leaning to one side and he couldn't stretch it the other way. So yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So I'm glad that they share. We have to share information, of course. Sometimes it's difficult to do, but we always have to share that, especially when it involves infants. Like, yeah. Now, maybe in Eric's case, they took a little, maybe longer than they should have, maybe, and sometimes some women have children and they pass out, they sleep, they'll go into sleep. His mom was like, where's my baby? Every woman handles it different, So she was already running out of there. So they had no choice.
Sure.
Yes.
I think also in the past, they used to keep the babies in a separate room. Now I think they put him in the same room as a mother.
Yes, they do.
Before it was
If they can. Go ahead.
When I had mine, they used to take him and then they would bring him just for feeding or whatever. And I think now it's better that they keep him in the room with the parents.
Yeah, unless we have a situation, right? Like Eric's situation, like that's
Yeah.
different. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I mean, hey, back not too long ago, you can then just hold the baby in your arms, right? Without the car seat, take the baby home, I was one of those babies that was just being carried. I was a football baby.
We survived.
Yeah, so but that was the time, now you can't. I mean, no, but you go to hospital, like you have to have the right car seat. No, hey, they want to see you. Hey, did you take the class how to put the kid inside? Oh my God, do you know how to feed the baby? Like, no, back then it's football babies. I mean, you just go home with it. Go ahead, Leticia.
Now, when I had my kid, they make you watch a video. Like they make you watch several videos. And then like afterwards, I was thinking like, I'm so drained. I do not want to watch these videos at all, because having a kid is just so draining. Like your whole body changes. And it's just, no.
Different times now, different times. So, but yeah, we've come along a long way in terms of how we transport children today. And some of car seats are they look super comfortable. So here's kind of what we're talking about in a wave of circuitry, right? So what we're looking at here is we're using this, we're looking at blue. So it's going to lungs. Red, right? In a way, it's coming from lungs, because red is typically in most textbooks represents oxygenated red blood cells. Blue, usually in most textbooks, again, there could be another book that has it backwards, right? Or use another color, but typically in most medical books, blue means that it's oxygen poor, or it has, there you go, oxygen poor right here. You probably I can't see it too well on my screen. The color is kind of off there. Or oxygen poor, meaning they have more carbon dioxide, right? So we have here superior vena cava right here. And then we have our inferior vena cava and coronary sinus, keeping track of right atrium. Now we have fill in right atrium, moving to right ventricle. From right ventricle, we're going to go up toward pulmonary meaning the word lung. So going toward lung, we have lung, pulmonary arteries here to pulmonary trunk, then to the lungs. So we may respire the carbon dioxide outwards. Let me see what this kind of says if I tilt my Might tilt my laptop at a certain angle. Oxygen poor blood is carried to tube owner. Okay, yep, okay, fine. Now, in this situation now, you have the respiration, right? Now think of the red blood cell as a bus, right? As a bus with 8 seats. Why 8 seats? Because hemoglobin has 2 heme groups. Each heme group contains O2, 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 O2. That's 4 heme groups with O2, 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 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 is 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. So 8 oxygen atoms. So 8 seats in the bus, in the red blood cell bus. Then as they come in here, we have oxygen. So the doors, quote unquote, of the red blood cell bus open up, and the oxygens, like little kids, jump into the bus, which is the red blood cell, and then sit in the seat of the heme group. And then the inside of the bus is hemoglobin, right? So that's how I think of it in my little imagination mind. And now they become oxygen rich. And now it has to go to the heart, back to the heart, so we can then create pressure, so we can send it out through all parts of the body, including crossing blood-brain barrier. So now let's take a look at this situation. So now we have this rich oxygen from the lungs, right? Because lungs, that's where we breathe in the oxygen. So here we go. So oxygen poor, oxygen rich. Remember, the one that is oxygen poor has more carbon dioxide, not carbon monoxide. Carbon dioxide, CO2. So keep that in mind, because I always throw it in the exam, CO2 and CO. Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, 2 very different things. So coming from, I wish they would have shown that over here. It's coming from lungs. Now it's oxygenated, right? And you're going to see here it comes. So it's going to come in here into left atrium. Okay, here we are. Okay, left atrium. And then once we get into left atrium, we're going to go into left ventricle. Remember, the person is looking at you. This is left side, this is right side. So we go from left atrium into left ventricle, right? And here we have valves. That's in part 1. So we come into here, right? We fill, we're at left ventricle, and then right here, you can't quite see it, the aortic semilinear valve is right there. Boom, gets pushed up to the largest artery of the heart, which is known as the aorta. And then voila, it's going to spread to different areas. And we also have area going to oxygen rich blood is delivered to the entire body tissues, right? That's what and so we're going to be delivering it everywhere throughout our body, because we need to make ATP. We need to send glucose, and within the blood, we have the bus opens up, and we also have glucose coming on board. So that bus is carrying a few things. It got proteins, amino acids in there, the hemoglobin, the iron, the oxygens, the carbon dioxide. It's a party in that bus. It's a lot of things going on. So that's what we have in terms of the flow or the circuitry of heart. And then we bring it all together, and voila, we have this beautiful, whoa, come back here. Okay, and we have this beautiful connection, circuitry, a closed circuitry, right? Closed. When it is not closed, what do we have? Internal bleeding. That is never a good thing. If you have an accident, I know we don't have insurance. I know, I've been there. I have been very poor before. I don't have no shame. You know, if anything, I'm an example of going from a kid who worked in the fields picking watermelons and cantaloupes and tomatoes to being a college professor and a toxicologist. So if I can pick watermelons, and I don't mean it like, I mean it seriously, like that's what I did. If I can pick watermelons and work on ranches and do these things and make it, we all can do it. So we have this here. And so I say that example so we can go to the hospital and get checked for internal bleeding. We don't want that. We want to keep the circuitry closed. That's what we need, because if we lose the circuitry and we do have bleeding, you know what's going to happen. Eric told you. His case is a little different, but if we have internal bleeding, we're going to lose blood pressure, and the heart's going to measure it. We have sensors. They're going to pick up on it, just like a car has sensors. Homeostasis is going to feedback, go into the CNS. CNS is going to go back to PNS. PNS is going to communicate with heart and say, hey, you need to pump more. We're missing something. We don't have the pressure, Scotty. You know, we need more power. And where we're going to get the power from the Starship Enterprise or the whatever thing, it's our Star Trek thing. It's the heart. The heart's going to pump, pump, pump. So that's one of the reasons why we need to be careful in terms of internal bleeding. We need to keep the circuit closed. Just real quick, pathway of blood through hearts. We've done a pretty good job of looking at this. Equal volumes of blood are pumped to pulmonary and to systemic circuitry. So mean equal amounts. So equal amount of blue, equal amount of red. That's what we're trying to say there. Pulmonary circuitry is kind of short on the low pressure. The systemic one, meaning the red one, this is the blue, and really is kind of more high friction. In part one, I talk about a fluid that's within the heart edges that helps reduce friction, because all things that move require some sort of lubrication, and the heart has a means of a lubrication. There are situations when inflammation of that area occurs, and as a result, increases stiffness and increases friction and causes fatigue in a heart. So just like the knee has a synovial fluid for reduction of friction, so does the heart. And I'm not saying it has synovial fluid, but it's something that reduces the friction. And also with friction increases heat. Just taking a look briefly on some anatomy between left and right. Remember I told you it's kind of an angle. So the left anatomical position, this person's head over here looking at you, thicker wall than the right. This part's the left is gonna be thicker. Look at that, nice thick. Over here, look at this, it's pretty thin. Look at that little crescent shape over here. It wraps around around over here, around left ventricle, kind of wraps around a little bit back here too. So it's very thick here, kind of thin here. Around over here, we have our interventricular septum. Pulmonary circulation, functional blood supply to heart muscle itself. This is going to be a short destination, short circulation, and usually when heart is relaxed, kind of calm, not in major fight or flight mode. Left ventricle is going to receive more blood supply versus right. Now, both left and right coronary arteries arise from the basis of the aorta and supply arterial blood pressure. So remember location of aorta, and that's what's going to help you if you haven't looked at your studies in terms of the PAL, the practice anatomy labs. Those models and practices really help you understand these things. All right, let me move on. I'm just going to focus on this part here and then this one here. Left coronary arteries supplying intraventricular septum, anterior ventricular walls, left atriums, posterior wall of left ventricle. It's going to have two branches. So I just really want to focus here. I won't go here either, and I won't go here. But right is going to be supplying right atrium and most of the right ventricle. Again, what's similar about these two? Well, they do have two branches. So left and right both have these branches. And we could take a look at that now. Left coronary artery, right coronary artery, okay? Two branches, let's take a look. Right coronary, remember, face here, head here, right, left, right coronary, and here's our left. So keeping track of where we are, again, not going to go much into the anatomical structure, right? But we have our superior vena cava, largest part right here, aorta, back here, running through here. Use your imagination, going back up that right there. That's pulmonary trunk back there, going through. This is anatomical location. So it's going to be left atrium. Left atrium comes straight across this way at an angle, not this way, because remember the heart is tilted. So come at an angle like this. Right atrium. Right? Come at right atrium. Now, come in here, your left ventricles, That's what was getting filled up last time. What we saw in terms of red, then we go over here, right ventricles. So just some of the anatomy of this beautiful, beautiful heart. Coronary veins. We have cardiac veins, and we have to, because we're going to collect blood from capillary beds. So we have coronary sinuses, and they empty into right atriums. This is what we're talking about. Again, looking back, superior vena cava. This is anterior cardiac veins, anterior. This is the great cardiac vein, coronary sinus. This is the small, and right here is your middle cardiac vein. Here again, we're looking at inside, a little bit inside. This would be more gross anatomy. I was telling the other students that when in my lab, what I do is I actually bring in, I bring in a part of the final for my labs. I bring in a pig, a large pig, into lab that was killed less than 24 hours. And then it's captured, contained, and then dispatched. But then it's sprayed to remove any potential fleas and ticks, and it's sprayed twice and it's hung up. So we don't have issue with that. But what we do is we then create a cardiology team, an endocrine team. We create all these different teams within students, and we go through drills in our minds, and we practice, and they actually do a dry run the lab before. Everybody knows who's going to go in first, who's going to cut, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. It's a really cool thing. And a lot of students have never experienced that, to actually see what is connective tissue and all this stuff. It was for a lot of people, it was their first time having that type of experience. And a lot of the students really loved it. And of course, we always wear our gloves, and we were safe. Nothing's ever happened. We practice safety. So it's a very interesting full gross anatomy lab. So it's kind of cool. And of course, there's always going to be those people who are going to say like, oh, that's too dangerous. Like, you can't do that. Like, what about blood disease? Oh yeah. What about the blood chapter when you have students pricking themselves in lab? What about them apples? To me, that sounds a little more dangerous. You got 25 students poking their little fingers and get their little blood to do their little blood typing. At least in my lab, my students never take off the gloves. Think about that. Think about that. Where I'm a risk assessor. Believe me, I understand. I have a PhD in toxicological risk assessment. I kind of have an idea where the risk lies. I don't do a lab where students prick their little fingers and do their little blood. I don't even play that game. We can do some simulation model or something, but we're not gonna be doing that. That's not something we should. I don't want to take risk on that. So we have a clinical here, angina pectoris, thoracic pain caused by a fleeting deficiency in blood delivery to myocardium. As a result, the cells become weakened. Why do they weaken? Because they don't have the blood flow. The blood flow is then taking oxygen, and oxygen was needed for ATP. The cells begin weakened. They don't have the energy, so they can do all types of metabolic functions, anabolic, catabolic functions. A myocardial infraction is a heart attack. So prolonged coronary blockage, areas of cell death are repaired, and non-contractile scar tissue. Now let's talk about this. So areas of cell death are repaired with a non-contractile scar tissue. So what we have here, areas of cell death are repaired with non-contractile scar tissue. There is a lot of scarring that occurs during a myocardial infraction, and as a result, the heart is not the same. We don't want scar tissue, and it cannot contract. Now, I will probably include this one in for you. So I know some individuals that are doing research and using, if you look at the spinach leaf, and you look at the vascular structure of a spinach leaf, its vascular structure is very similar to that of a heart of the human. And what they have learned is that they have removed lots of cells and infused a spinach leaves with the human's blood and have used it as a graft onto heart where there is scar tissue, and the heart actually receives it and doesn't reject it and contracts, and the cells work really well together from a spinach leaf. So this is emerging technology that is happening that may one day help people with myocardial infarctions by using spinach leaves. So cool research. So I will definitely send you that in your file that's called like your case studies and additional information. I'll send you that link, and it's something really cool. And it's on the horizon, guys. It's on the horizon, and many cool things to come. Go ahead, Eric.
Yes, sir. I was actually reading on that. It was a really interesting article on how they were able to get spinach leaves like that. That just blew my mind.
Yeah, and I always think about the guy who or girl who just looked at a spinach leaf one day and like, wait a minute. Like, that's called serendipity, right? When you're just not really thinking about it and you see something, you're like, wait a minute. So someone must have been knowledgeable of heart and looked at a spinach leaf or at the grocery store, like, thought about this idea, like, wait a minute, they look very similar. Maybe we can do something. Very cool stuff. Very cool. So yeah, we use that in terms of myocardial infractions. Cardiac muscle, keep track of time for me, guys, because I have my cell phone somewhere charging. Just please keep that, help me out with that. Cardiac muscle, we won't go too much into this stuff because we already did muscles. Right? Look at the old sarcomeres coming into play. Z-disc, A-bands. Hey, what the heck? It almost looks like we're back in skeletal muscle chapter. So we're not going to dabble in that. But one thing I do want to say in terms of cardiac muscle is they contain large amounts of mitochondria. They have to. 23 to 35% of cell volume. They don't say the why. They just say that to afford resistance to fatigue, because they're assuming that that, hey, that mitochondria is the cell's powerhouse. That's going to be cranking out ATPs because that pump it keeps pumping. Something needs to power it, right? So that has to have mitochondria. You just have to have it. Why doesn't red blood cells contain mitochondria inside? They don't really have organelles. Why? Because, man, you start having mitochondria in your red blood cells, they're going to use up your oxygen. So you'll just have poor oxygen red blood cells, and that's not good. We're not going to even go into intercalated disc. We've already gone through all the desmosomes gap junctions. It's just repeats. Not going to do it. Just real quickly, I guess I could talk about intercalated. I'll just mention intercalated disc here. So these are your intercalated disc, right? So we have these, and we have our cardiac muscle and our nucleus. But this is very signature of the cardiac muscle, very signature. And then just briefly, this is just a repeat of muscle chapter. We have some gap junctions. And then we have the Velcro. I always call it the Velcro. That's how I remember it. Why it's the Velcro? Because desmosomes keep myocytes from pulling apart. I don't know. I think about the little kids that can't tie their shoes yet, and they're in Velcro. That's why the Velcro. It's easy. It helps keep the shoe on versus tying their shoes all the time. And here we go. We've seen this before. Similarities to skeletal muscles. We're not going to get into all that. I'm not going to get into too much of that. I will talk a little bit about function versus the anatomical stuff that we did in part 1 already. I will talk about a little bit in terms of contraction as a unit. So all cardiomyocytes contract as a unit, like a symphony, all in order, happening at once. And if not, none contract, because they have to be efficient. You can't have, can you imagine having some parts of the cells contract and some of them not contracting? Oh my God, what a disaster. Yeah, it would be bad. Contraction of all cardiac myocytes ensures effective pumping action. Well, not only effective, but efficient. So but skeletal muscles contract independently, right? Skeletal muscles, like you can flex your arm, your biceps, and have your other bicep not. But the heart, no. It's in unison, synchrony, synchronized, always together. It's just the way it works, and so it's the way it's supposed to work. We won't get into any of this here. We know all about that. All right, let's talk about physiology. This is what this class is all about. So the heart relies most extensively on aerobic respiration. Let's break that down, right? Anaerobic, low oxygen environment, or no oxygen environment. Think of aerobics. When you see aerobic, think of aerobic. Do people even do aerobics now? Is it all just yoga? Like, because like in the 80s, I think those aerobics, there was a guy with like fluffy hair. I don't know what his name is. He was kind of popular or something, like really weird hair. I don't know. I used to see that guy as a kid always like doing aerobics or something. Spandex, right? Nobody uses spandex, right? No more. They use yoga pants. So think of aerobic, jumping up or down, aerobics. Like I said, I don't know if people do aerobics. I don't know if yoga is aerobics or not. Just trying to help you guys put a little 2 and 2 together. So your oxygen is needed. Cardiac muscle has more mitochondria than skeletal muscle, so it has a greater dependence upon oxygen. Boy, it is not going to do so well without oxygen. That is how come if you are swimming and you hold your breath, those of you who know how to swim and you're diving, and as you're holding your breath, you can hear things in water easier. Why? Because the water molecules are closer together and sound ripples, versus in air molecules are not constantly touching one another. So in water, you get rocks, and underwater you can go, and the sound will travel because you have molecules that can take that sound with you, right? Well, in the case here, in terms of, let's say, cannot function without oxygen. Sorry, I'm not sharing screen here. We're going to go back. Just like you can hear the little rock over there. When you hold your breath and you're diving, or you're just floating, trying to take a challenge and who can hold breath, you can hear your heart go. It starts pumping more, and your heart rate kicks up when you're ready to come up for air, right? Because it requires so much ATP. It's highly dependent upon ATP. So it uses little reservoirs to pump, but you're holding your breath because you're underwater, and it's trying to get this oxygen. The heart doesn't know you're underwater and that you can't get the oxygen. That is controlled by the CNS, because your CNS knows you're underwater. You can't be breathing underwater. The heart doesn't know that. So the heart's like, hey, what's going on over here? And it goes on its own. But you can hear it. You can hear it underwater. And that is one of the reasons why you have a situation here where it is highly dependent upon oxygen and cannot function too well without oxygen. Now, skeletal muscle, as we know, though, that skeletal muscle, you can go into fermentation at a low presence of oxygen. You could do it, and then you go into fermentation, you form lactic acid, and then you have sore muscles, right? sore muscles through DOMS, delayed of onset muscle soreness through formation of acid. You get sore. That's not happening with the heart. That's not going to happen. You're not going to get lactic acid. All right. Not going to be doing that too much. So it says cardiac is more adaptable for other fuels, including lactic acid, but must have oxygen. It's really, you're not really going to go into fermentation. Skeletal muscles can go through fermentation with oxygen presence, but you're really not going to pull that off with the heart. You need oxygen. All right. So we finished part 1. So questions. I'll stop recording to save time.